my country, a group of religious extremists are reshaping the government to promote their own agenda and morality.
The government can keep a list of everyone I call, and they do not need a judge's permission. Our citizens are seized and held in prison without being charged of a crime, without the right to a trial, and without a lawyer. Why should you care about what is happening to my country? Because my country is the United States of America.
The religion of every man must be left to his own conviction and conscience, and there is not a shadow of right for government to intermeddle with religion.
When my grandmother moved here to the United States in 1949, she came here from China, and she was the daughter of a Japanese woman and a German man. And she spent the first 15 or 20 years that she lived in this country denying who she was. She was made to feel responsible for the atrocities that had been committed by the Germans and the Japanese. And she, of course, had no part in that. She was just German and Japanese. Much as you all are being blamed for things that have happened in this country. And I think that you need to recollect where you come from and where you're going and not be ashamed of that, and be supportive of groups such as this one. And so we ask you, please, to give generously so that we can continue our work and so that your community can take its rightful place here, and none of you have to worry that you will be targeted or looked down on because of where you come from or who you are.
He was placed in a solitary confinement for 10 days before he was eventually released on the 11th day. For the first 7 days, he was placed in a cell without air conditioning. He told us oftentimes that he felt like he was about to suffer a stroke due to the heat and his high blood pressure. He couldn't sleep or eat under these inhumane conditions. He did mention that the only thing that kept him sane was the Quran and prayer. And if we don't unite together and solidify, this is going to give them a chance to go to the schools, the mosques, and God knows what next. We're not going to hide, and we're not going to quit, because there's nothing to be ashamed of.
They wanted to search our house right after that, but my mother and I did not allow it on the basis that they didn't have a search warrant.
And one of the things that I feel like I've known all my life is that in this country we're presumed innocent until found guilty. We're presumed innocent. Well, how could you punish someone before they've been convicted? How could you put them in the penitentiary and put them behind bars and keep them in a cell before they've been convicted? Well, of course you couldn't do that. That would be unconstitutional and unlawful to punish them.
I want to ask you about Brandon Mayfield.
There were certain provisions of the Patriot Act that apparently were used.
They entered into his home without his knowledge. They apologized to Brandon. They said, whoops, we made a mistake. And the lesson to be learned is that if it happened to Brandon Mayfield, it can happen to anyone.
I want you to know tonight that everybody in prison is not a criminal. They are political prisoners. And they are in great company. A man who won the Nobel Peace Prize was in prison for 27 years, Nelson Mandela, and he comes out and becomes the president of South Africa. They're in good company. Great man named Gandhi, a political prisoner for 7 years. Wonderful company. Martin Luther King Jr., when he was fighting for civil rights, the FBI put him and his group, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, put him on the list of terrorists. Now Martin Luther King Jr. spent time in jail. But now this country celebrates his birthday. good company. 20 years ago in New York City, I had never been to prison. And I went to the Commissioner of Prisons and I said that I want you to do me a favor. I've never been to prison, and I would like to go there and visit for about 4 months. And they looked at me and said, "You crazy." And I said, "I'm serious." And after investigating, they came back to me and said, "Imam Siraj, I'm sorry, they will not allow it." But it seems as if they're saying today, "Imam Siraj, you still want to go to prison?" We may let it happen. But then I would say I would be in good company.
I'd say it's a real success story in the war on terror. You know, we finally got the guy that wrote Peace Train.
I heard that. I thought it was hilarious. And because many a true thing said in a jest, and that's a fact.
But the U.S. government isn't laughing. It says this soft-spoken former entertainer poses a real risk to the security of the United States.
The United States government has called this a serious matter. There have been no details released as of yet as to exactly why you've been put on this no-fly list.
God almighty, I'd love to know. I'd love to know.
But they have said it has to do with you giving money to organizations that support terrorist activities.
Absolute rubbish.
What's puzzling is, until last week, nothing in Islam's past ever kept him from visiting the U.S. In fact, he made 2 trips here earlier this year, one to New York 2 months ago, and one to Washington 4 months ago, where he even met with White House representatives.
Has anything happened in the last 2 months? Have you done anything that could be construed as threatening in any way?
No, absolutely not. And that's what I'm really looking forward to finding out. And I don't have any other defense, you know, than the truth. And I'm just waiting to be told what I've, supposed to have done. Then I can deal with it.
For Yusuf Islam, the thought that he might never be allowed back in America evokes a very different emotion.
If it were resolved quickly, would you come back to the United States soon?
Can we not answer that question, because it's difficult for me to even answer until we get this thing resolved.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just curious.
It's difficult, but
Are you okay?
Yeah.
You find your video collection out of order. A computer file is missing. Secret search?
One of the Patriot Act provisions that people on both the left and right have been very concerned about
I'm missing some files.
Is Section 213.
Hi, have you been on my computer?
It's sometimes called the sneak and peek provision.
It means that a court can convene and approve a search warrant. They can come in while you're not home, search your house, and not tell you.
Throughout American history, whenever there's been a crisis, especially a foreign-based crisis, the response has been repression. And then in hindsight, we realized we weren't made any safer from the loss of rights. It was true during World War II, where Japanese Americans were interned. That was true during the McCarthy era, where people were put in prison for the mildest of speech. There's been a massive infringement of liberties.
Disturbing aspects of the Patriot Act is that it institutionalizes discrimination against immigrants.
And as long as we're selling fear, and as long as we can hang that tag terrorism on it, there's the invitation to the government to reach farther.
We must promote justice. We mean justice for Muslims and justice for all.
I strongly urge you all to support Muslim League Fund of America and their good work.
I would encourage Muslims everywhere to donate as much as you can, generously, to this wonderful organization.